My sister's childhood friend was tall, handsome, and impossible to ignore. When I was little, he was always holding me and kissing my cheeks. My sister liked him, so did I. But I never dared to confess, ashamed of the thoughts I carried. I left home instead. He followed me all the way to my university, cornered me against a wall, and said, "I suppose you never realized that two men can fall in love too. Did you, Eric? What kind of love story will bring tears to your eyes? Welcome to Bamboo Shadows, where unforgettable BL stories remind us that every soul deserves a love worth fighting for." The day my exam results came out, I made up my mind to confess my feelings to Albert Dunn. I had already decided how it would go. I would give him the choices. If he accepted me, I would enroll at a local university and stay close to home. If he could not accept a relationship between two men, I would choose the university farthest away and never come back. As for whether I was the top or the bottom, I did not care. I would be whatever Albert wanted me to be, as long as he was happy. That was enough. Albert was the same age as my sister. He was 24 that year, 6 years older than me. Our families lived close to each other. Since Albert's parents were always busy with work, he had practically grown up in our house. He and my sister had been classmates from kindergarten through high school, whenever they met. They argued endlessly. With me, however, Albert was endlessly patient. He always said, "My Eric is much sweeter. I like spending time with you best." Ever since I was young, he had loved pulling me onto his lap and kissing my face. I still remembered when he first started growing stubble. The short, coarse hairs had scratched against my cheeks, and I pushed at his face, thinking I disliked it. Albert laughed. "Eric, this is proof that I'm a man. Today, I'm going to make sure you appreciate it with that." He pinned me beneath him and tickled my sides. His stubble brushed against my chin, making me squirm with laughter. In the middle of our rough housing, his lips accidentally grazed mine. We both froze. Albert released me and slowly sat up as he straightened his wrinkled clothes. A wicked smile curved his lips. "Your lips are surprisingly soft, Eric," blushing furiously. I kicked him. He did not get angry. Instead, he gave me that careless, roguish grin of his. "If you were a girl, Eric, I'd definitely marry you someday." It had been nothing more than a teasing remark to him, but I remembered it for years. The flutter in my chest that day never truly faded. I only kept wondering why I had been born a boy. Now, I was finally an adult. I had learned that love did not exist only between men and women. Two men could love each other too. They could share every kind of intimacy the world had to offer. Some people could accept that, others could not. I could only hope Albert belonged to the first kind. I reached into the bottom drawer of my desk and took out an old adhesive bandage. After so many years, it had long since lost its stickiness, but I had kept it perfectly flat and carefully preserved. It still looked almost new. When I was 13, the rest of my family went away on vacation, and Albert was assigned to supervise my homework. He had just returned home for summer break after his first year of college and was recovering from a terrible cold. His throat was so inflamed that he could not speak, trying to imitate the adults. I made him pear soup with rock sugar. While peeling the pear, however, I accidentally cut my finger. Albert immediately ran downstairs to the pharmacy to buy me a bandage. When he came back, there was a cut on his fingertip too. Since he could not speak, he had gestured for ages, but the clerk still could not understand what he wanted. In desperation, Albert had taken the clerk's fruit knife and cut his own finger to demonstrate. I cried as I wrapped his wound. "Albert, how could you be so stupid? If they couldn't understand you, you could have called me." I cut my hand, not my legs. I could still walk downstairs. Albert stared at me for several seconds before laughing at his own foolishness. He typed a message on his phone and showed it to me. "My Eric really is the smart one." I was in such a hurry that I forgot to bring my brain that day. The normally wild and untamable Albert pulled me into his arms and laughed like a 6'2" idiot. I carefully ran my fingers over the expired bandage before dialing Albert's number. His clear, magnetic voice came through the phone. "Hello, Eric. What did you call your big brother for?" His words were slightly muffled. He was probably smoking. Whenever Albert smoked, he liked to hold the cigarette between his teeth. It would hang loosely from his lips, always looking as though it might fall, giving his handsome face a dangerous, wicked edge. His tone became even more careless and teasing whenever he smoked. "Albert, my college entrance exam results came out. I wanted to hear your opinion." I took a deep breath. "Eric, I'm about to leave on a business trip. Once I come back, I'll help you look over your options." "All right." Albert seemed to remove the cigarette, and his voice became more serious. "I also have a present for you. And there's something I want to tell you, Albert. I want to see you. I only need half an hour." Just as I hurried to ask him to meet me, my sister pushed open the door. "Eric, Who are you talking to? She asked with a smile as she walked in. Albert, I answered honestly at once. She took the phone from my hand as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Albert, have you finished packing for the business trip? Albert gave a quiet laugh. Assistant Perry, please address me as CEO Dunn. Keep pretending. And I'll post those pictures of you wearing split-crotch pants on the company forum, my sister threatened cheerfully. Emma Perry. When are you going to learn from your Eric and stop being so sharp-tongued? Albert said through gritted teeth. I don't want to be as mild-tempered as he is, my sister replied. Immediately. Albert, don't forget to pick me up. I have a lot of luggage. I won't forget, Miss Perry. Albert said with a helpless laugh. There was a trace of indulgence in that laugh, one that perhaps even he had not noticed. My sister and Albert had attended different schools after graduating from high school. After college, however, she joined Dunn Corp and became Albert's assistant and secretary. It seemed they were going on this business trip together. I stared at the phone after my sister ended the call and casually tossed it onto my bed. A dull sadness settled in my chest. I had not even finished talking to Albert. Eric, does this dress look good on me? My sister's voice interrupted my thoughts. She was wearing a pale pink dress that flattered every curve of her slender figure. When she turned, the skirt flared around her like the petals of a blooming flower. It looks good, I said with a nod. My sister was usually bold and energetic, but now her cheeks turned a rare shade of pink. A shy, girlish expression crossed her face. Eric, do you think Albert will like it if I wear this dress when I confess to him? Even her earlobes were red. Her eyelashes fluttered as she looked at me expectantly. My heart seemed to stop. My throat closed so tightly that I could not speak. So my sister liked Albert too. How had I been so blind? People often said that constant bickering could hide affection. Was that not exactly what my sister and Albert were like? They had argued since childhood, yet after every fight, they continued playing together. The more they quarreled, the closer they seemed to become. Even after 4 years at different schools, they had fallen back into their old rhythm the moment they reunited. Without the slightest awkwardness, they teased and fought with each other every day. They truly did look like a couple. I had noticed none of it, because I had been trapped inside my own secret, shameful world. Emma, you like Albert? Yes. My sister looked like a girl experiencing her first love, shy and full of hope. What about Albert? Does he like you too? I asked. I don't know, but Albert is such a catch. And he hasn't dated anyone all these years. I'm the only woman he keeps close. So I can't help wondering if he's been waiting for me. My sister had bright, expressive eyes. At that moment, they overflowed with affection. The phrase mutual love suddenly came to mind. Albert had once said, my Eric is soft and sweet. If you were a girl, I'd definitely marry you someday. I had forgotten something painfully obvious. There was already a girl who resembled me, with features much like mine. There was no need to imagine her as the opposite sex. She was already someone Albert could marry. Perhaps when Albert had said those words to me, he had actually been thinking of my sister. My fingers unconsciously dug into the adhesive bandage in my pocket. I had preserved it for 5 years, keeping it almost as good as new. Now, I crushed it beyond recognition. Eric, do you think Albert will say yes? My sister asked hopefully. He probably will. You're so beautiful, Emma. I'm sure he likes you. The words left my lips in a faint murmur, even though they tore through my heart. My sister beamed, her smile as radiant as a flower. Then Albert will be your brother-in-law. I'll make him buy you the most expensive game skins. I forced a smile and nodded. The moment Albert called, my sister rushed downstairs. I stood by the window and looked down. Albert stepped out of his car. He had broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and long, powerful legs. He effortlessly took the suitcase my sister could barely lift and placed it in the trunk. My sister watched his back and smiled to herself. Perhaps it was only my imagination. But just before Albert got into the car, he suddenly looked up, straight toward my window. Startled, I ducked out of sight. By the time I looked again, the car was already gone. I hated myself for being so foolishly self-important. Eric Perry, stop flattering yourself. Albert would never like a man. Stop lying to yourself. More than an hour later, they should have reached the airport. Albert sent me a message. Albert, what were you trying to tell me earlier? Your sister interrupted before I could hear you clearly. Me, nothing. Have a safe trip. Albert, you did well on your exams. What reward do you want? Me, I don't need anything. I'm not a child anymore. Albert, you'll always be a child to me. I like spoiling you. Me, Albert, stop talking to me like that. I'm a man. Even if you don't find it disgusting, I do. Albert immediately sent a voice message. His voice was low and seductive, carrying a faint note of warning. Are you asking to be punished? Little boy, He was always saying affectionate, ambiguous things like that, drawing me deeper into the tenderness he offered without even realizing it. Even when he was angry, there was something indulgent beneath his forcefulness. Was it really my fault that I kept misunderstanding him? I replied coldly. My classmates invited me out. I have to go. Albert, then I'll choose your present myself. Don't buy me anything, just treat my sister well, Albert. What does that mean? He did not understand yet. Once my sister confessed, he would. I did not want to explain, so I turned off my phone. Before my sister and Albert returned from their business trip, I hurriedly submitted my university applications. I chose a university in a city far, far away from home. I left before my family even had time to hold a graduation celebration. I did not want to see Albert. Even more than that, I did not want to watch him and my sister acting lovingly in front of me. I would rather die than endure that. Albert called me afterward, but I did not answer. Then he sent me a message. Albert, I brought you a present, but now I can't even find you, brat. Why didn't you wait for me to come back? I replied briefly. Staying home was boring. I don't want the present. Give it to my sister. Albert did not respond again. Once university began, I had too much free time and constantly wanted to find something to do. Unfortunately, I had always been lazy and unwilling to perform physical labor, so I never found a suitable part-time job. Then my roommate invited me to film short videos with him, Eric. Videos about men dating men are incredibly popular right now, Neil said excitedly. It's a huge trend. People actually watch men dating each other? Do they have nothing better to do? Who cares why they watch? A friend of mine works in social media marketing. He can help push traffic toward our account. So, Eric, are you interested? Interested in what? Filming videos where we pretend to date. You're so pretty and fair-skinned. It would be a waste not to use that face. Can we make money? I asked. We could get rich overnight. Neil declared, overflowing with confidence. Fine, let's do it. I made up my mind on the spot. I needed money. It was not that my family was poor. The problem was that a considerable sum appeared in my bank account every month, always under the same name, Albert. Sometimes I wanted to transfer every cent back, point a finger in his face and shout, "Stop humiliating me with your damn money." The truth, however, was that I enjoyed spending it. By the end of each month, there was barely anything left. If I could earn my own money, I could finally repay Albert. After all, my sister was the one dating him. I did not want anyone accusing her of supporting a useless younger brother. Neil discussed the idea with his friend, and the two of us decided to film sweet, romantic moments between college roommates. Apparently, young women love that kind of content. Since I have fair skin and delicate features, it was only natural that I played the bottom. Neil played the possessive, domineering top who spoiled his boyfriend endlessly. Our videos usually follow the same formula. I would sulk, throw a fit, and make trouble all day, while Neil tried every possible way to coax me into smiling again. The role suited me surprisingly well, so acting it out was not difficult. I had always been quieter than my sister. Whenever something bothered me, I kept it bottled up inside and often became moody without explaining why. Albert had always found ways to cheer me up. He never wanted me to feel left out or alone, so really, I was just playing myself easy. Anything too explicit would never pass the platform's review process. So, whenever a scene became intimate, we blurted out. At the end of each video, suggestive music would begin to play. The mood would turn heated, and the girls online would lose their minds. They all assumed Neil and I had switched off the camera and gone straight to bed together. In reality, the moment we stepped out of frame, we sat down with perfectly serious expressions and started discussing editing. One day, none of our roommates were around, so Neil and I filmed in the dorm for the scene. He lifted me onto the bathroom counter and leaned over me. Lowering his head, he asked, "Are you going to keep acting up, you little brat, every time?" I said yes. He pretended to kiss me. We had already captured all the footage we needed. Yet Neil continued gazing at me with an expression full of affection. I pushed lightly against his chest and laughed. "Neil, your acting is pretty convincing. I'm almost falling for that look in your eyes." His gaze dropped to my lips. "Could we do it without pretending?" "What the hell, Neil? What are you trying to do?" Startled, I jumped off the counter. Neil immediately returned to his usual spoiled rich kid expression. "The fans have been asking for it. You scared the life out of me," clutching my collar dramatically. I hurried over to check the footage. Then I turned around and saw someone standing in the bathroom doorway. Albert. What was he doing here? I had not seen him in months. Ever since I left home, I rarely called my family. The moment I heard my sister's voice, I would make some excuse and hang up. I wanted her and Albert to be happy together. I simply did not want to hear anything about that happiness, Albert. What are you doing here? I asked awkwardly. I had no idea how long he had been standing there. If he had seen Neil and me filming, the situation was more than a little embarrassing. Albert's face was dark with anger. After casting me a brief glance, he turned his attention to Neil. A red bite mark had been painted across Neil's collarbone. I had painted it myself. I had taken art lessons when I was younger, and the mark looked realistic enough that most people would not have known it was fake. Under Albert's cold stare, Neil made no effort to cover it. Instead, he tugged his shirt even lower. The crimson mark stood out vividly against his skin. Albert stared at him. Neil stared right back. If looks could take physical form, sparks would already have been flying between them. The tension in the room was sharp enough to cut. I could not understand why two men who had only just met seemed to hate each other, as though they were mortal enemies. Albert was usually gentle and even-tempered. He rarely argued with anyone. Neil was a carefree, spoiled young man who laughed off almost everything. Neither of them was normally petty. So why had they taken such an immediate dislike to each other? And the suffocating silence, my mind seemed to short-circuit. I actually walked over to Neil and pulled his collar higher to cover the painted bite mark. Neil immediately caught my hand and laced his fingers forcefully through mine, confused. I looked up at him. Albert's expression darkened even further. "Eric," he ordered coldly, "come here." I tried to pull my hand free, but Neil refused to let go. "Neil, what are you doing?" I asked, beginning to lose my temper. Neil lowered his head and smiled helplessly. "I can't resist you when you act cute." "You're the one acting cute, asshole." I glared at him. Neil finally released my hand. Before I could react, Albert seized my other wrist. His grip was rough and forceful. Without giving me any choice, he dragged me toward the door. "Albert, you're hurting me." He ignored me. In the car, Albert kept a tight hold on my hand. He did not say a word. His lips were pressed into a hard line. I had never seen him like this before. Even though his grip hurt, I did not dare complain. Again, when we reached the hotel where he was staying, Albert pulled me straight into the bathroom. Then he began scrubbing the hand Neil had touched. "Albert, what's wrong with you?" He said nothing. "That hurts." His movements finally became gentler, but then he added another pump of soap. He washed each of my fingers one by one as though he were scrubbing dirt from a radish. Annoyed, I turned my face away. Albert finally spoke. "Eric, don't let him touch you again. That boy obviously has impure intentions." I almost laughed. "He's my roommate and my filming partner. There's nothing wrong with his character." "I'm not talking about his character." "Then what do you mean by impure intentions?" I asked, genuinely confused. Albert's eyes were dark and unfathomable as he looked at me. After a long silence, the corners of his eyes softened slightly, and his voice turned gentle. "Be good, Eric. Listen to me and stay away from him." I wanted to agree, but I could not. Neil and I had built our account into something successful. We already had hundreds of thousands of followers and had accepted quite a few advertising deals. Giving it up now would be the same as throwing money away. "Albert, I can't promise that," I said firmly. "Our account is making good money. I want to earn my own income." Albert struggled to contain his anger. "You're a student. Instead of focusing on your studies, why are you so obsessed with making money? Whatever you need, I'll give it to you." "That's different. I want to earn it myself. I've already saved enough to repay the money you transferred to me. I'll send it back soon." Albert rubbed his brow. "Do you really have to draw such a clear line between us?" "Yes, my sister is my sister, and I'm me," I said with a smile. Just because he was dating my sister did not mean I could shamelessly take advantage of him. Albert raised an eyebrow. "What does this have to do with your sister?" I forced myself to grin as though I did not care. "Why are you still pretending? Aren't you and my sister together?" Albert frowned and sighed. "Your sister did confess to me, but I turned her down." "Why?" I asked in shock. "I don't like her that way. There's no romantic feeling between us. I've always seen her as family, and I never considered having that kind of relationship with her." Albert gave a bitter smile. "My sister must have been devastated." "She was. She demanded that I double her salary and said she would never forgive me unless I did." That certainly sounded like my sister. If Albert could not give her emotional satisfaction, she would settle for financial compensation. Albert looked at me. "I thought you had been ignoring me because you found out I rejected her and were angry on her behalf. Now I can see that wasn't the reason. So tell me, Eric, why did you suddenly stop talking to me?" I picked at my fingers and began making up an excuse. "You all took such good care of me growing up that I suddenly wanted to learn how to be independent." Albert smiled and shook his head. "What's wrong with being protected? Why insist on making life harder for yourself? My parents will grow old. My sister will get married, and you'll get married too. No one can protect me forever. Albert nodded thoughtfully. Your parents will grow old, and your sister will get married. But I may not marry a woman, and even if I do get married, I can still protect you. The two things don't conflict. You don't understand, Albert. If you ever get married, I'll never bother you again. Why? You don't need to know. I pulled my hand away and walked out of the bathroom. When I first learned that Albert had rejected my sister, a shameful flicker of happiness rose inside me. But once I calmed down, another thought struck me. Albert was so obviously straight. How could he possibly be gay? The idea that I could turn the older brother who had watched me grow up into a man who liked men was nothing more than wishful thinking. I stepped onto the balcony and called my mother. She confirmed that my sister and Albert had never gotten together. Then why didn't any of you tell me? My mother sounded exasperated. Every time I mentioned your sister on the phone, you hung up. When was I supposed to tell you? And your sister is far too proud to bring up something like that herself. Then she asked, did you see Albert? I heard he's thinking about opening a branch office in the city where your university is. He went there this time to inspect the area. Why would he suddenly want to expand here? I don't know. By the way, I introduced him to a young woman. Remind him to come back soon so they can meet. Your aunt has been worried that your sister was heartbroken. She has no idea how much money your sister squeezed out of Albert. I feel guilty, so the least I can do is introduce him to someone else. I ended the call, feeling dejected. See? Even if it was not my sister, there would always be some other woman. I composed myself and returned to the living room. Albert was sitting on the sofa, staring at his phone. His expression was so dark that he almost looked sick. He seemed 1 second away from hurling the phone across the room. Albert, what are you looking at? He slowly raised his head. A dangerous, almost terrifying smile curved his lips. Then he spoke each word with deliberate emphasis. Eric, are these the videos you've been filming? He turned the screen toward me. He had somehow found the account Neil and I shared. It was called Dorm Life with Two Boys in every video. Either Neil was pinning me down, or I was trapped beneath him. It was exactly the kind of content young women loved. Most straight men, on the other hand, would probably find it a little beyond their comprehension. I reached for the phone. Albert had clearly anticipated that. He slipped it into his pocket and narrowed his eyes at me. Albert, let me make up an excuse. No, wait, let me explain. Albert crooked a finger at me and patted the cushion beside him. I obediently sat down. He draped one arm over my shoulders and drew me against his side. Eric, he said quietly, explain. It was all for the money. Neil and I have never crossed any boundaries. Every kiss was staged, I swear. Albert slowly rubbed my arm with his large hand, his tone unreadable. You like him? How could I possibly like him? We're both men. What about him? Does he like you? That's impossible. Neil's family is rich. He could have as many girlfriends as he wanted. Does he have a girlfriend? Well, no, I admitted softly. Albert's hand slid to the back of my neck. Whenever he could not control me any other way, he liked to hold me there as though he had found my weak point. His fingertips were rough. With thin calluses, I instinctively shrank back. You're not filming any more videos, Albert said slowly, and you're not staying in that dorm. I'll buy you an apartment, and you'll move out. Albert, you can't just make decisions for me like that. This is my career. I was still arguing when Albert suddenly slipped one arm beneath my knees. He tightened his hold and lifted me into his arms. He used to carry me like that often when I was a child, but now that we were older, we were rarely so intimate. Albert stared straight at me, his eyes filled with an emotion I could not begin to name. A flicker of panic ran through me, and I pressed both hands nervously against his chest. His powerful heartbeat thudded into my palms. I quickly pulled my hands away again, suddenly unsure where to put them. All I could do was watch as Albert leaned closer. His scorching breath brushed over my face, and I swallowed nervously. If he lowered his head even slightly, his lips would touch mine. I trembled, wanting to retreat, but unable to make myself move. After what felt like an eternity, Albert's Adam's apple shifted. Eric, he murmured in a dangerously seductive voice. How does this feel, Albert? What are you? My spine went rigid, and my scalp prickled. The next second, Albert dropped me neatly back onto the sofa. His eyes were already clear and composed, as though the tangled, intimate moment between us had been nothing more than a dream. When he spoke again, his tone carried the grave patience of an older man lecturing a naive child. Eric, you're still too young. You see many things far too simply. Don't you understand that one man can feel desire for another? Just because you don't think that way doesn't mean that boy doesn't. What will you do if he tries to? force himself on you one day, with those thin arms and legs of yours. Do you really think you could stop him? Embarrassment and anger flooded through me at once. What was that supposed to mean? After teasing me like that, he had only been trying to teach me a lesson. How do you know I don't understand? I snapped. I know far more about what men do together than you do. I'm telling you, I'm gay. Men are exactly who I like, Eric. Don't say things just because you're angry. Albert's gaze darkened. I'm not saying it out of anger. It's the truth. I wanted to return to campus, but Albert refused to allow it in the end. He threatened to tell my mother about the videos Neil and I had filmed if I did not listen to him. Only then did I stop arguing. There was only one bed in the room. I offered to sleep on the sofa, but Albert refused. We've slept together before. He said with an unconcerned smile, Eric, I practically raised you in my arms. That was when I was little. Still sulking, I lay down on the very edge of the bed. But when I woke in the middle of the night, I discovered that I was sleeping in Albert's arms. His breathing was deep and even. One of his arms was beneath my head, while the other rested around my waist. I felt so wrong that I nearly cried. Albert, how could you understand nothing and still hold me with such complete innocence? Meanwhile, I lay in your arms, caught between happiness and resentment until my chest ached. It was so unfair. In a fit of frustration, I kissed him. At first, it was only the lightest brush of my lips against his. When he continued sleeping soundly, my courage grew. I became so excited that my teeth accidentally knocked against his lip. Albert frowned slightly and let out a low sound. I froze in terror, but soon, his breathing deepened again. This time, I did not dare hurt him. I only kissed him gently. Albert's body was unbelievable even in his sleep. The muscles of his abdomen remained firm beneath my wandering hands. He was impossible not to admire. Like a cat stealing a forbidden treat, I secretly acted out every scene I had imagined for so long. Only after I had finally had my fill and felt thoroughly satisfied did I drift back into a deep sleep. What I did not know was that while I moved quietly beneath the blankets, Albert opened his dark, wakeful eyes after I fell asleep. He silently got out of bed and went into the bathroom. The next morning, Albert had to leave for a business meeting. He ordered me to remain obediently at the hotel. I was not allowed to leave until he had found an apartment for me. I nodded as sweetly as I could. Satisfied, Albert rubbed the top of my head. My Eric is always so well behaved. The moment he left, I contacted Neil, as if I would give up. Our video account was thriving. How could I possibly abandon it now? Me, buddy. Where are we filming today? Neil, where are you? Why didn't you come back last night? Me, don't ask. My brother thinks we're sleeping together. He wouldn't let me return to the dorm and lock me up in his hotel. Neil, your brother. Me, my neighbor. We're not related by blood. Neil was silent for a moment before replying. Neil, I'll come to the hotel. Today's theme, to boys are no longer satisfied with merely teasing each other in the dorm. So they go to a hotel to cross the final line. I nearly applauded. Me, that's a great setup. Come quickly, my brother is staying in a 5-star hotel. So the room is perfect, and we don't even have to pay for it. Neil, wash yourself and wait for me. Me, already clean and smelling amazing. Hurry. When Neil arrived, he did not immediately set up the filming equipment. Instead, he looked around. The suite. What are you looking for? I asked. For once, Neil had lost his usual playful expression. His frown deepened as he turned to me. Eric, where did you sleep last night? In the bed. What about your brother? He slept in the bed too. Why? That has nothing to do with filming. Hurry up, he could come back at any time. I urged. Neil looked unusually serious. Eric, you're both grown men. How can you sleep in the same bed? He used to hold me while we slept when I was little, especially when I was sick. I wouldn't let anyone else take care of me. I only wanted him. It's not a big deal, is it? I lied without so much as blinking. If Albert ever found out what I had secretly done to him the night before, he would probably strangle me. You said it yourself. That was when you were a child, Neil replied. You're both adults now. You should keep some distance. Absolutely not. That night, I planned to get Albert drunk and kiss him properly. The night before, I had been so nervous that the thrill had outweighed the pleasure. Still, I nodded obediently at Neil. All right, I understand. I'll tell him to book another room tonight. Neil's expression finally eased. The scene we planned to film that day involved the top's birthday. The bottom gave him several presents, but the top disliked every one of them. Annoyed, the bottom demanded, what exactly do you want? The top crooked a finger with a wicked smile. Come here, I'll tell you. The scene would then cut away, leaving the audience with a long suggestive gap to fill with their imaginations. The next shot opened on the hotel's large white bed. Two boys lay beneath the covers, their bare shoulders exposed. The sheets were so tangled that anyone could guess what had supposedly happened. The bottom looked at the bite mark on his shoulder and asked, his ears turning red, "Are you satisfied with this present?" The top gave him a wicked grin. "Can you give it to me again?" Then the image blurred into soft focus as flirtatious. Laughter played in the background, originally after Neil said, "Can you give it to me again?" I was supposed to bury my face against his chest. That was where the scene ended. I was about to climb out of bed and check the footage, but Neil remained above me and refused to move. "What's wrong?" I asked, confused. Did we miss something? Neil stared at me without blinking. "Eric, let's stop pretending and make it real." "What?" Before I could process what he meant, Neil lowered his face. "That bastard actually bit me." I hissed in pain. "Neil, have you lost your mind?" Neil looked up and pinned my shoulders down with all his strength. Fear wiped my mind blank. I could only resist on instinct as he leaned closer. "Eric, we're so sweet together." "The fans are obsessed with us," Neil said, naked desire burning in his eyes. "I really do like you. Let's be together." "It was all fake." "Fake?" "Neil, get the hell off me." I raised my arms to block him. But Neil was clearly stronger. Without the slightest concern for hurting me, he forced both my wrists above my head and lowered his face toward mine. I squeezed my eyes shut in despair. "Neil, I swear I'll kill you." The kiss I expected never came. Instead, there was the sickening sound of a fist striking flesh. I opened my eyes and saw Albert standing beside the bed. There was a violence in his expression I had never witnessed before. Veins stood out across his forehead, and his eyes were terrifyingly cold. One punch sent Neil sprawling sideways across the mattress. Neil had barely begun to fight back when Albert dragged him off the bed. Albert looked as though he had lost his mind. Murderous rage burned red in his eyes as he straddled Neil and drove his fists into him. Each blow delivered with all his strength. I rolled off the bed and caught Albert's arm. "Albert, stop hitting him." Albert froze and looked at me, pain filling his eyes. "You feel sorry for him? You're going to kill him if you keep going." Albert gave a cold laugh. "Then we can die together." "Albert, please stop. I don't want you to die. Please." I clutched his arm against my chest, close to tears. At last, Albert stopped, with open disgust. He wiped the blood from his knuckles across Neil's face. "Harass Eric again, and I won't let you walk away." Neil spat out a mouthful of blood and smiled provocatively. "Eric and I live in the same dorm. You can stop me today, but can you watch him every day?" Albert's gaze turned dark and unfathomable. "Yes," he said calmly, "I can." Albert took me to an apartment. I had not expected him to be so efficient in a single morning. He had already found a place and completed all the paperwork. "Albert," I carefully tugged at the hem of his shirt. "Ever since I was little, I had been skilled at making myself look pitiful." Albert had never been able to resist my wounded, pleading eyes. This time, however, he said nothing. He walked to the balcony and returned with the dog chain. "Albert, why do you have that?" "You weren't planning to. Had he prepared it in advance? The previous owner used it for his dog." Albert said, "It seems perfect for an ungrateful little stray like you." He sat down beyond my reach and opened a bottle of red wine chained to the headboard. I sat as obediently as possible and tried my best to look harmless while he drank glass after glass. "Why are you drinking?" Albert, gradually, the alcohol began to affect him. He came over, lifted my chin between his fingers, and stroked it gently. "Why?" he murmured. "Because when I'm drunk, my sense of morality isn't quite so strong." Then he kissed me. I had never known that a kiss between two men could be so forceful, so fierce. There was no patience, no gradual tenderness. He descended on me like a storm, leaving my mind completely blank. By the end, the taste of blood lingered between us, and I could no longer tell whose it was. After what felt like forever, he finally stopped his relentless assault and rested his forehead against mine. "Eric," he said, his voice thick with anguish, "I've spent all these years refusing to touch you, and you went to bed with him." My heart ached at the pain in his voice. "Albert," I whispered, trembling. He raised his head, anger still burning in his eyes. Then his gaze shifted to the bite mark on my shoulder. Neil's teeth had rubbed away the painted mark. What remained now was real. Albert narrowed his eyes and lowered his head without hesitation. "Albert." At my cry, a trace of reason returned to him. "Eric," he said in a muffled voice, "I'm so angry. Make me feel better." "How?" I asked, my eyes red. "Take the initiative." Everything I had secretly done to him the night before, Albert returned many times over. Again and again, when my mother called, Albert was applying ointment for me. I rejected the call, but she immediately called again. Albert lifted his eyes and said coldly, "Answer it." Under the pressure of his stare, I picked up. Eric, my mother said. Ask Albert when he plans to come back. I need to arrange for him to meet that young woman. All right. The next time I see him. I'll ask. My mother paused. Eric, what are you doing? I glared helplessly at Albert, who wore a smug expression. He had done it on purpose. He had deliberately made me cry out. It's nothing. I accidentally bumped into something. What did you bump? Nothing, Mom. I have to go. After a hesitant pause, she said, Eric, I understand that young men have strong urges. Maybe you should find a girlfriend, otherwise, it isn't healthy for you, Mom. I'm not doing anything. I ended the call in a panic. The culprit looked completely pleased with himself as he smiled at me. Anger surged through me. I rolled over and pinned Albert beneath me. He did not resist, if anything. He looked as though he was enjoying himself. Holding him down, I gripped his chin firmly. Call me daddy, and I'll let you go. Unfortunately, insulting him seemed to excite him even more. His breathing turned uneven, and he ran his tongue over his lips. Eric, you can do anything you want to your big brother. 3 days later, I returned to the dorm to pack my things. Albert came with me. Neil hurried over. Eric, he didn't do anything to you, did he? Albert folded his arms and gave a dismissive scoff, his expression clearly saying, let's see how long you can keep pretending, afraid they would start fighting. Again, I quickly explained, Albert would never hurt me. I came back to withdraw from school. I'm going abroad for a few years. Neil stared at me in shock. Is he forcing you? I shook my head. No, it's my choice. Neil still looked unable to believe it. Then what about our video account? Albert spoke lazily. Don't worry about the account. I already reported it and had it suspended. What the hell? Neil immediately pulled out his phone. When he saw that the account really was gone, he lunged at Albert in despair. You manipulative bastard. I'm going to kill you. Albert did not move. Instead, he glanced at me. The meaning in his eyes was obvious. Aren't you going to protect your husband? I had no choice but to step between them and shield him. Once we got into the car, however, Albert decided I needed to be punished again. His reason was that, while protecting him, I had accidentally made physical contact with Neil for 1 whole second. The moment we got into the car, Albert began lecturing me. Lift your hips higher. Eric, you understand what you did wrong. And remember this, when I'm angry, you shouldn't tie your drawstring yourself. Why is it tied so tightly? Are you trying to stop me from touching you? At that moment, I completely agreed. With Neil, Albert really was a manipulative bastard. I could not believe I had been deceived by his act for so many years. I had thought he was gentle, generous, and perfectly honorable. I had been such a fool. I went abroad. Albert abandoned his plans to expand his business into the city where my university was located. Only then did I learn that he had wanted to develop the company there solely because of me. He had been attracted to me for a long time. His original plan had been to wait until I became an adult, then slowly teach me that love between two men was possible. He had not expected me to run away first later. When he discovered that I was even bolder than he was, and had begun filming romantic videos with another man, he decided there was no reason to restrain himself any longer. Whenever Albert had time, he flew overseas to see me. We kept our relationship secret remarkably well. That lasted until my sister suddenly came to visit me abroad. Albert and I had just returned from grocery shopping, hand in hand. Before we even reached home, Albert had already started kissing me on the street. My sister nearly lost her mind. She accused Albert of corrupting me, called him an animal, and threatened to tear him apart and feed him to the dogs. Albert remained silent and allowed her to curse him. Only after she finally ran out of breath did he speak. I'll double your salary again if you pretend you never saw anything. My sister answered immediately. Deal. In my 5th year abroad, my mother finally discovered our relationship. She was overwhelmed with regret. The moment your sister turned 18, I stopped letting Albert stay overnight at our house because I was afraid he would steal my daughter away. I guarded against everything. And somehow he didn't take my daughter. He took my son instead. My mother firmly opposed our relationship. Albert's parents opposed it as well. Albert and I were not particularly troubled. We were far away from everyone, so we continued living our peaceful life together. By the 10th year, our parents were the first to give in. They agreed to let me return home, but they imposed one condition. We were forbidden from showing affection in front of them. My mother said, I'm afraid I'll feel sick and pass out. So whenever we were around our parents, Albert and I behaved like two paragons of chastity. We buttoned our shirts all the way to the collar and did not dare let even our fingertips touch. At last, evening came, and we were finally able to leave. I had just pressed the elevator button when Albert suddenly pulled me into the emergency stairwell. Albert, have you lost your mind? Desire surged in his eyes. Yes, he said. I've been holding back so long I've gone insane. I closed my eyes in resignation. By then, I understood him far too well. If I refused to cooperate, I would only suffer more later. Albert smiled in satisfaction. Eric, remember one more thing. When I come looking for you, it means it's time for you to take the initiative. And that's the end of today's story. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this original BL romance, you'll find many more exclusive stories waiting for you on Bamboo Shadow's Patreon. I'd love to see you there.